The way healthcare is moving, the way people are moving, they want to know everything. It's the information age.
The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics showed doubling of the amount of money spent on fitness gear after 2020.
So we spend the most money on this, but we're also the fattest country.
And that's one of the biggest things that I've seen with these continuous glucose monitors is that it really trains people on how to eat a better diet.
With a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love, that's a life that we live. Suits and scrubs.
Hello, everybody! Season 3! Welcome to another episode of Suits and Scrubs. I'm your host, Zachary, SVP. A little health.
A little wealth.
And a lot of love. Damn it, I keep leaning forward. I told you guys I'll get better by that, but I don't know if that's possible. So with me, I am with Emily, MD. I know I said that already, but I'm going to say it again. She's double board certified in internal and BC medicine. She believes that the power of the patient should come from quality information by listening to our podcast. I'm kidding. But she is exploring functional medicine and aesthetics. Fun fact about Emily, she is wearing matching shoes and matching belt. Tell them.
You always comment on what I'm wearing.
Because you always look amazing. The best accessory a man can have is a hot woman. And man, I tell you what, you looking sexy. Yum, 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 yum.
Well, thank you, Zachary, SVP, our finance guy who has managed over $1 billion to date in his finance industry. And he has also reached his Coast Buyer number. And fun fact about him is that he has only gone beardless for a very short period of time throughout our entire marriage and relationship.
Well, let's explain that.
I do like facial hair. I like beards. And I like a beard on you.
And when I do not have a beard on, she doesn't talk to me until it grows back.
It's not true.
It is very true.
Entirely. I was in shock.
And then every time I come across and I don't have a beard on, and I say, hey, and she, you know what she does? She goes, ugh. Remember that one time you went, ugh. It wasn't like, ooh. It was like, oh. It was like, ugh.
I don't know if that's true. I didn't talk.
It was that true. Okay. Remember I was Wreck-It Ralph, and I said, wow, you reacted, and she was like, ugh. Man, God, my face, you did do that. You don't remember that?
No.
You don't remember that? You laughed about that for like hours. I'm like, you just said ugh to me. And it was funny because Emily is a very sweet person. Like genuinely, she's one of the nicest people. She's an empath. And there's moments in life where she does things like she'll go, goal. Remember that? Remember, I know you remember when you said that. I'm not going to mention it on this episode. And then you went, ugh. So yeah.
Moving on.
You know we match.
Do we?
We do. So you're wearing
red shoes.
Bow, bow, bow!
Speak at your own risk.
That's not fair.
Yes, it is.
You can't.
We haven't had a speak at your own risk punishment in a while. So
You don't play fair at all.
I wasn't going to play fair.
What is it, red?
Red was the color. Red was the word. Here is this wheel of punishment.
All right.
Make sure people see. If it's rhyme time, I swear to God.
If
it's rhyme time, you can spin again.
I think we need to officially retire rhyme time. It's a long one.
Wow. Somebody doesn't know their own straight. She's not getting rhyme time this time. I swear if it's rhyme time.
Oh, dragon dress up.
No, it's not.
Oh, songbird.
Oh.
I guess next time I have to sing this song.
People are in for a treat. Songbird. So songbird means that you have to sing a song for 30 seconds on our next episode where I am emceeing, not when you're emceeing.
Okay, yeah.
So that was dirty. I know that was dirty, but I
That
felt like I
was
wanted to
dirty.
wake you up a little bit, leading the witness. All right. So today's episode is technology and health, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we want to start out. We always go with our side story. So last time we talked about acromantia. So Em, do you want to tell people about the tests involved? Did we talk went into nitty-gritty details about collecting the sample? Let's talk about the test.
Yeah, we can go through, I think when we get the actual results back, we can go through the specifics about what it analyzes, but we decided to go with the Thorne gut health test.
Not sponsored, but maybe
gut
should be.
microbiome test. Yeah. And it was a pretty straightforward, easy test. It comes with its own packaging for you to, all you have to do is drop it off at the post office.
Yeah, I was talking about like the actual, like, don't you have to do like an actual test? Like ask questions. They ask you questions and things, right?
Oh yeah, you have to do.
Yeah,
they want you to do an initial health profile, and so they'll ask you about what your diet is like, what your exercise habits are, what your main chronic health conditions are, if you've used antibiotics within the last 90 days. So a little bit of background to, I guess, further analyze your results.
Yeah. And so we completed those tests. I got an email, I think yesterday, about, oh, your test was complete. And once we get our results back, we actually might do a full episode on that. I think that'd be fun for the folks to understand what's in our poop. Yes, I said that. What's in our poop. So the other 30-day challenge was landed last time, last episode. It was a walking desk. So we did purchase this walking desk. We're super excited about those. We mentioned this last time, but I'm actually going to change my fitness. Those of you may not know, I try to be as transparent and probably too honest on this podcast. I am doing Zepbound. Yeah, Zepbound, because I gained 65 pounds. If you guys remember, I said this in an earlier episode. I gained 65 pounds while on COVID, heaviest I've ever been, unhealthiest I've ever been. I lost 40 pounds, but the last 25 just ain't coming off, and I think I probably could do a little bit better, but I keep gaining and losing the same 10 pounds. I think it's adulthood.
Yeah, and the food cravings, the
food
cravings,
noise,
I think is
all that. So on Zepbound. So with that and the walking desk, we committed to do 4 or 5 miles a day. We're gonna have trackers and all that. We'll report out to you guys. And then also weight training. We want to switch completely. Like we're gonna do weight training in the morning, and we're gonna do that walking like instead of doing our high intensity interval training. So and more to come on that. All right, so the first segment is the refactions. I have it here. Refactions. All right, so this one is asking Dr. Mike about fitness wearables. Now, if you don't know Dr. Mike is one of the most followed YouTubers. Now, we like Dr. Mike, but I'm going to be honest with Dr. Mike. Shout out if you are watching Dr. Mike. I doubt it, but you could be. He actually did not go all the way. He didn't practice medicine like as a primary care doctor. He actually got famous before all that happened. He's still med school, so like I go toe to toe with his knowledge. I'm right there with him. But you're a practitioner. I listen to practitioners more than people who are, education.
He doesn't practice at all?
No, I don't think so. But fact check me on that. Anyway, here's Dr. Mike.
So you see how the tech is fire. It works. It tracks things. But what we do with that information is really problematic because until we get some guidance and we gather enough data to actually make use of it, more data just means more health anxiety, more weird interventions that we don't even know if they work or not.
Yeah. The magic really is in when the watch notifies you and specifically how it sort of gives you and displays the information in a way that's useful.
Yeah.
Because it can measure all at once, but it's not necessarily like if you go through the health app and scroll for a while, there's tons of stuff, your breath rate, your like heart rate over time, and all these different things. VO2 max, somehow it knows, and I just don't know what to do with that information.
I think it's entertainment purposes only for now.
He says entertainment purposes only. Good time to cut it off. So, yeah. So what's your refaction on that?
I think they can be helpful, but you have to know to what extent. You can't use that as the end all be all, and you can't use it to the point where it causes health anxiety, but I think they can be extremely helpful. They can be motivating, they can change behavior. We had the last health episode with my
First thing that
with
popped in
my
my
dad
head.
with his Fitbit.
Yep.
And they never had activity trackers until we got them the Fitbits for Christmas, and I know how competitive my dad is, and so as soon as they got those synced up, he was ready to go and walking 4 miles a day, and probably significantly increased his activity level. He's is busy and on his feet and pretty active to begin with, but I think that really was a motivator for him.
For sure. If you know anything about her dad, like he's a goal-oriented person, and he's really going to set them goals. And if he meets a goal, just do a rewind. I don't know if I cut it off before it said this. 364 days at 365 days, he walked 4 to 5 miles. And the day he didn't walk, that was because he had eye surgery. Mm-hmm. And believe
That's
me,
true.
if he could have done it, he would have done it. Mm-hmm. So that honestly, that's motivation. I really respect him a lot for that, because I think once he commits to something, he really follows through and takes action. It's not a lot of people do that. So yeah, that was. Anything else you want to say about that?
Well, I mean, we will, I think, spend the entire episode kind of going into the benefits, the actual statistics behind it, and maybe when you should be a little bit more cautious.
Yeah.
With using the technology.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. I'm actually excited because I'm a big fan of wearables. Mine's broke like 2 months ago, and I tried to. Actually, it's funny because I just tried to get it fixed and replaced. We talked about it, so I'll order another one for sure, because it looks. I love looking at it to make sure I hit my active calories for the day. So okay. So the next segment we have Mind and Money Matters.
Mind and Money Matters.
So tell us, Emily MD.
So Mind and Money Matters, we're going to talk about the statistics about the consumer, the U.S. consumer, and money spent on not only the technology, but just fitness in general. And so the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics showed doubling of the amount of money spent on fitness gear after 2020, which I think we maybe understand or expected. Everybody was at home, or most people were at home with COVID, and a lot of people were getting stir crazy and wanted to improve fitness.
Right.
And so they bought they weren't able to go to gyms, so they bought a lot of home equipment. And so I think that's
I was one of those.
Yes.
I know I raised my hand a lot, like you guys can see on the podcast, but I definitely was one of those, raising my hand for sure.
And that's understandable. I think I also have a graphic that shows the trend, because it was pretty steady for several years, and then it doubled. So there was a huge increase just between 2020 and 2021. And the other interesting thing that I found with research on this is that the U.S. ranks number 1 in spending and innovation of physical activity market worldwide. So the U.S. in every aspect, every subcategory is number 1. The U.S. consumer spends the most money on fitness gear, and so this includes like gym memberships, it includes like home workout equipment, but it also includes the fitness technology.
That's almost like an oxymoron. I'm sorry. That just feels weird, because it's we're the fattest country too. Mm-hmm. So we spend the most money on this, but we're also the fattest country.
Yeah, so specifically, I think this was 2021 or 2022 that they did the Global Wellness Institute did this study, but $8.1 billion spent by U.S. consumers on fitness technology. And we ranked the 20th in fitness participation. And it shows that we're not having much, despite being...
Do you know who won was fitness?
I don't.
That's
I don't
all right,
know
that's
who
all
was
right.
number 1.
Yeah.
But I think it shows that we aren't making any improvements in our chronic disease profile and metabolic syndrome.
Assuming that health is directly tied to fitness and activity level.
Exactly. And I think the other thing to consider, and something that they mentioned in this study, is that it seems that the wealthy, the people who have more access, are the ones that buy these fitness trackers and are likely contributing to their own health benefit. But people that don't have access are the ones that are at higher risk of having chronic disease and having these other cardiovascular and metabolic issues.
So is Emily MD saying that she's for, or more on that later?
More on that later.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anything else you want to add on that segment? That was cool. Actually, it was really interesting, the stats and all that.
Yeah.
I did not know that America was in that position. So we're the fattest country, but we're also the ones spending the most.
Spend the most on.
But that's our culture. I think
Yeah.
we're a very capitalist, very materialistic, culture.
Looking for a quick fix.
Looking for a quick fix. We're a very materialistic culture. Like most other cultures are not like that. Like they want the newest TV. We want this. We want that.
Yeah, we want the newest, trendiest,
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah. Okay. So what are some examples of technology that you can use for behavior modification in healthcare?
Yeah, so in Dr. Mike's video, they primarily talk about more of the activity trackers, like the Apple Watch. You've got your Fitbits. There's your Garmin watch. There are all sorts of smart watches that you can get that will track a number of things. So they'll track your steps. A lot will track your sleep habits. They can track your heart rate. Sometimes they'll even track your oxygen saturations.
How does it do that, do you think?
It's similar. I think the way that most of them check your O2 sat is kind of similar to the technology for the O2, the finger pulse oximeters that you can use and buy over the counter. And same thing with the heart rate. The sleep has to do with probably a combination of your heart rate and movement while you're sleeping in different stages of sleep. But those have been around for a while, and you can have something as simple as just a pedometer that doesn't track all those things. It just tracks the steps that you walk per day. So that's, I would say, a big group. And then other technologies, now that a lot of us have smartphones, are the apps that we can use. So things like the Lose It app or MyFitnessPal, where you can track both your calorie intake and the foods that you're eating with your calorie expenditure, the activities that you're doing.
And we actually do the Lose It app. It's probably one of the better ones that we tried. Again, not sponsored.
Yeah, and then the other things, mindfulness apps that can help with mindful meditation and calm and relaxation. And then one of my personal favorites, the CGM, the continuous glucose monitors, which have been around probably for 10 years or so, but I think are gaining a lot of traction in not only diabetes management, but just metabolic health and weight management in general.
Yeah. So have you seen any of your patients actually use these devices? And what would you say about their overall impact to health?
Yeah, so the CGMs, I think, are the most impressive. I've seen the most results, and
That's why they're your favorite?
That's probably why they're my favorite. And I've used them more.
We're so excited about it. We do plan on using that if it lands on the 30-day challenge.
Yeah, and it's something that started off, so initially it was used more for type 1 diabetics as a way to continuously monitor their blood sugar levels to see when they needed to dose their insulin. And we started using it more for type 2 diabetics, especially the brittle, what we call brittle type 2 diabetics, are the ones that had high insulin requirements. Or
What do you call it, brittle?
They can have high highs and low lows.
Gotcha.
They kind of, they're labile. They can go back and forth. They're not within a good range. And we use the continuous glucose monitors as a way to try to improve their blood sugar control, but also as a way to make sure that they didn't go low. So for type 2 or for any diabetic patient, really, it's usually more dangerous if they're hypoglycemic, if they go low, than if they go high. Because, eventually they might not feel very well when they're high, but eventually you're able to get that blood sugar down, and it's not, in most cases, there are some exclusions to that, but it's not fatal, but for if someone's blood sugar goes low enough, it can put them into a coma. It can cause death.
It's interesting. So defining terms here. So glucose is sugar.
Yes.
Let's be like, yeah, because I want to break it down because I know this because I'm married to this, right? Moving on. So when it goes low like that, why is that fatal? Why are you going in coma?
Well, you need sugar for energy. You need the sugar in your
Did
cells.
you hear that, people? You need sugar for energy. I need some sugar.
You need glucose for energy, and when you aren't able to utilize the sugar that's circulating in your blood, if your cells aren't able to use it, then a lot of your bodily processes shut down. You can go into, it alters your mental status. You can go into a coma. It can cause seizures, and it can be neurologically devastating if it's not corrected quickly.
I did not know that. So what are some of the stats associated with these devices?
So I am going to have to read off of the specific statistics.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. And this is what I say to people: like, we're keeping it real. Emily and I, we do a lot of research before every episode, and if we are looking at the screen, you're watching us on the YouTube channel. We don't have these memorized. Like, why? There's no need for that. But what we do is we break it down. She'll review it, and then she'll analyze it.
Well, I'll go back to, because we didn't really talk about specific patient cases.
Yeah, let's do that.
That I've seen.
Oh, put a pin in stats. Pin.
In practice. So we started with the CGMs. So I had some diabetic patients that had a new diagnosis of diabetes. It was very poorly controlled and really had no idea what they should be doing to manage their diabetes, had no idea what activities they should be doing, had no idea what foods they should be eating. And that's one of the biggest things that I've seen with these continuous glucose monitors, is that it gives you that feedback in real time. So I ate this, it made my sugars go really high, I need to stop eating this. And then it shows the good things that you eat to keep your sugars within a certain range. And so it really trains people on how to eat a better diet, and specifically how to improve their diabetes through diet. And they can see too dosing of medications. If they're giving themselves too much insulin or too little insulin, it really helps them to kind of hone in.
That's really cool.
And these CGMs too, you can download so that you're a doctor, whenever you see your primary care doctor, your endocrinologist, your diabetes specialist, they can see what your trends are. And so it helps them to be able to dose your medications in a better way.
Yeah.
Based on, because a lot of times a lot of doctors, we have patients come in that haven't been checking their blood sugar, and it's kind of like treating in the dark. You don't know what their numbers have been. It's hard. It's really hard to treat if you don't have data to go off of.
That's right. That's interesting, because I feel like as technology replicates, as more information is available, like, these things are available to people. I know there's a cost associated. It's not cheap, because we're looked into it, right? And so I feel like what's interesting about the continuous glucose monitoring is everybody's different. Like, you may metabolize broccoli differently. You may metabolize bread. All that will tell you based upon that. And that is something that, if you guys keep watching, that's something that we are passionate about exploring. And we're going to show live results on this. And so we're going to be, I don't know if they're going to be the arm or what. I'm kind of nervous about that, because I just don't like, I don't know if it'll hurt, but they say it doesn't hurt. So
yeah, typically it's minimal pain, and then you forget about it after you place it. And other things, I've had just other things that patients have come in to show me, like Fitbit or Apple Watch. They'll show their sleep trends, and they might show that they have frequent awakenings, more awakenings than what you would see on a typical sleep pattern. And that could be an indication that they have like sleep apnea. Or in the case of my mom, she actually was diagnosed with narcolepsy, with type 2 narcolepsy, which is not the extreme case where you fall asleep in the middle of having a conversation or driving. But we always suspected she was always, tired during the day. If she sat down for a minute, she's always busy doing stuff.
That's
but
if
she sat down, she could easily just nod off. And
there's so many times we're doing our family thing. It's so funny. and we're sitting there and things are calm, things are chill. And I'll be like this, let me see what Betty's doing. And she's over there doing this like,
She's the eyes.
Mom, mom. It's hilarious.
So I believe whenever she was tracking her Fitbit, her sleep schedule, it would show that she went into REM to her REM cycle almost immediately after falling asleep, which is, and not to say that these are completely accurate or 100% accurate, but I think that they're a good indicator that you need to talk to your doctor about them and then get more definitive testing down the road to confirm that something is actually going on.
Speaking of, let's talk about stats now. Let's get in some juicy morsels here. You know, we had an appetizer. We explained some of these things. So M's going to review these stats. Again, they're on the screen, but she's going to explain these stats and then kind of react to them and give some more background.
Yes. So a JAMA article published in 2023, which was a population-based cross-sectional study, showed that 1 in 3 Americans use wearable health trackers. And of those with those health trackers, 80% discuss those findings with their physician. So that's a big percentage that will actually have dialogue with their physicians based on those findings. And then less than 25% of those at risk for heart disease used these trackers. And then another meta-analysis.
Let's pause on that. So 1 in 3 Americans use wearable health trackers, as you said. And then folks who have heart disease, 25% do not use these trackers.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's a causation there, that using the health trackers decreases your risk of heart disease. I mean, some of it could be.
But I do believe this is behavior modification. If I'm looking at my Apple Watch and I'm like 600 active calories and my goal is 1,000, you best believe I'm gonna try to do something about that.
Yeah. And you can also look at it too. We discussed this a little bit earlier, that there's a cost to this technology. And if you think about the people who don't have access, who aren't able to spend money on these sort of things, they also have less access to healthy food,
Right.
and tend to eat probably more ultra processed food. And so they also are at higher risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So like I mentioned, it doesn't necessarily, the study didn't show that there was a causation, but just a correlation between the people who had trackers and heart disease.
Gotcha.
But I did find a couple other studies. So there was a meta-analysis in 2022 that did show that activity trackers improve physical activity, body composition, and fitness, equating to approximately 1,800 extra steps per day, 40 minutes per day more of walking, and a reduction of approximately 1 kilogram in body weight, which isn't huge, but it's still statistically significant.
Right. That is significant. So far we're going do. It is behavior modification. So the good, the bad, the ugly. So the good is Americans are having the most, right? The bad is we're the fattest country. And the ugly, we'll probably get into that in a moment.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I've had Fitbits for a long time now. I've gone between Fitbit and an Apple Watch, and there is something that just makes me feel motivated to work out when I see that I have only walked 2,000 steps that day. It's just something internally that's like, oh, I'm being sluggish, I'm being sedentary, I need to get up and move.
Right. We did a whole episode on sedentary lifestyle. Sitting is the new smoking. Did I do that right? Yeah. I used to say walking. I don't know what I said. Anyway, sitting is the new smoking. Actually, that was our last episode. But again, we may drop these episodes in different orders. So we will do that episode. You haven't seen that? Check it out. It's really funny because your dad is our refactions on that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, he loves his Fitbit.
Yeah. All right, let's move on with some more stats. There's a lot of stats here today, but this is good how it frames the episode.
Yeah, so this last study that I'm going to reference, it was in the Diabetes Technology and Therapeutics Journal in 2021. So they did a study that they had type 2 diabetic patients, and they were on the same diet. They had the same exercise plan, but they gave one group the continuous glucose monitors, and the other group did not have the CGMs. And they saw that the CGM group showed greater reduction in body weight with consistently less glycemic variability and a 40% greater reduction in diabetic medications. Wow. So both groups showed their hemoglobin A1C decrease. So their control of their diabetes was better. But the CGM group also showed more weight reduction, also showed a decrease in the amount of diabetic medications that they were taking, and decreased the variability. So their blood glucose stayed within, their blood sugar stayed within a tighter range.
Just because they had these monitoring.
Yeah, just because they had the CGMs.
And that's why you're such a big fan of these, because you actually have real life. So one thing about Susan Crow's, we believe that practicing is the most important data pool. You can read it in a book, you can go to med school, you can get a Series 7, you can do all the things. But practical knowledge to me is the most powerful, and you are speaking of practical knowledge. That's what one thing that we always identify with as we talk about things like that. Are we practitioners? Are we adjacents, meaning we know somebody? Or are we enthusiasts? We're practitioners in this subject. Because we also have Fitbits too.
Yeah. And
or I'm an Apple Watch guy.
I think the push here, a lot of these studies, we're trying to go more in the prevention side of things.
Right.
So historically, with these continuous glucose monitors, the only way insurance will cover them is if you are a type 1 diabetic or if you're a very poorly controlled type 2 diabetic, if you have a high reliance on insulin. So the question is, will this benefit people who have prediabetes or who have type 2 diabetes that aren't on insulin yet, where we can prevent them from going to that way?
Don't you love how insurance is dictating the quality of care you have? So mark my words on this. An idea popped in my head, and I will do an episode on this because we talked about this for months. I will do an episode of a cost-benefit analysis of doing catastrophic insurance versus traditional insurance. And if you go the non-traditional route, you can choose based upon the funds that you have what you plan to use those funds for, not the insurance companies.
Yeah, I mean, some people don't have a choice too. If it's someone who's more on Medicare, Medicaid, government assistance,
that's true.
They're at the mercy.
That's true.
of government insurance, and they can't afford some of these things. But I think it's moving in the right direction. We're seeing a lot of health and fitness companies market these CGMs, and I think most of them are the Freestyle Libre. So it's a technology that was created for type 2 diabetic.
That's good.
CGMs, but they also have an app interface where they'll interact with what your continuous glucose monitor readings are and give you some feedback. But there was recent news just within the last week that they are releasing, the FDA has approved a over-the-counter CGM for use that's supposed to come out in the summer, I think, is whenever it's supposed to hit pharmacies.
Yeah, so how do you get a CGM if that's something you want to do? I know we're going to get it because that's something that we want to do eventually if it lands on the 30-day challenge. But you want to talk more about like if folks are interested in this? I think it is important to track your sugar levels. And I think you should just live your lifestyle. So that way you can understand where your body responds to certain foods. Like for example, we said we weren't going to do this tonight, but we are having a drink. So welcome to our recorded date night. I hope that you guys are watching this and you're also have a date night. That's the goal. Date night with us. But yeah, so how do people get those?
Yeah, and so this is probably going to be another controversial thing that pops up with the over-the-counter continuous glucose monitors, because I think a lot of people, it's trendy to see how you respond to different foods,
but it's trendy, but it's also, I think it's a good thing.
I agree. I think that we should be focusing on prevention, and we should be focusing on
prevention,
on training ourselves what is
that's
healthy
what
for our bodies.
Yeah, keep going.
And so why I say it can be controversial is because I think I fear that we're going to run into another issue like we're running into with the Wegovy and Ozempic and Zepbound and Mounjaro, that they're going to be flying off the shelves and there are going to be shortages and no one can find them. Right now, if you want, you can go to Zoe, I don't know how you pronounce it. They have CGMs that you can buy if you have a subscription. NutriSense is the other popular CGM. I think there's another one that I can't remember the name. So they're out there where you can get it without a prescription. But if you go through your doctors can get you a prescription for it, but you have to pay out of pocket if you don't meet certain criteria. So most people have to be already checking their blood sugars 4 times a day with a finger stick to even qualify.
Which I don't understand this. I just feel like you pay so much money in insurance, right? So much money. And you want to do this to prevent things. I mean, wouldn't you think that'd be more cost in the future? Remember in our last episode, we say we pay
more for health
we pay
now,
less now and more later. Come on, girl, where you at?
Don't read your mind.
You don't know. You weren't there with me. All right, well, she wasn't there. So what I said last episode 3 times was you pay less now, but you pay more later. So I feel like it's one of those scenarios. And like, yes, I understand like the way healthcare is moving, the way people are moving.
Yeah.
Is they want to know everything. It's the information age. You have ChatGPT. You have a cell phone. Yeah, there's this really cool infographic, and hopefully the video editors can pop it on the screen. There's a point to this. There was a video camera, and then there was a snapshot camera, and then there was this equipment, that equipment, a computer, all wrapped in one. It's now your phone. That is powerful.
The other thing, and we watch a lot of cult documentaries.
Oh, geez.
And we were watching.
We got to finish the last 2 episodes.
I know, we were watching something last night that mentioned. It's funny how history repeats itself, but it mentioned in the 60s or 70s there was a lot of mistrust in the government, and I think we're in that time frame right now during the COVID pandemic where healthcare was politicized on both sides, and there's a lot of mistrust on both sides. And I think people are trying to take charge of their health, but they don't really know who to trust and who to follow. And so they want more and more information. They want the hard facts.
Rightfully
they want
so.
more data so that they can be proved that this is the right thing that they should be doing.
But what can people do? Subscribe to us. Mm-hmm. You have an MD on board here.
Yeah.
And
we're quite trustworthy.
Yeah. Well, no, seriously, but we're practitioners of this. We're doing this ourselves, and follow along on our journey. We're going to communicate exactly what we're doing, but also give you updates. But also too, from a wealth perspective, we're going to do some really radical things in the future. So stay more tuned on that. There's some juicy drama going on that I can't wait to share, and how we're going to live is going to be so different than most people, and I can't wait to share that lifestyle.
Just along for the ride.
Yes, you are, and it's a great ride, ain't it? Not bad to look at too, is it?
It's always entertaining. I'm never bored.
Never bored. Okay, so now we talk about the good. Talk about the bad. Now let's talk about the ugly. So what disclaimers and warnings do you have against these technology in healthcare?
These technologies are not perfect, and I think a lot of companies, a lot of these tech companies are trying to come out with the newest information, and they're trying to shock and awe and try to grab people to get them to buy their new devices.
That's right.
But
I think Dr. Mike, before I cut it off, he says this is for show. This is for entertainment.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that sometimes there can be too much, and sometimes it can be very overwhelming, especially if you don't know how to use that information, if you don't know how it applies to you or what you need to do. And so I do recommend that you have a trusted healthcare provider that you can bring this information to, that can tell you, is it legitimate, is it not legitimate? And specifically, some of these heart monitors are inaccurate. They might tell you on your wrist that you're in AFib or that you have an irregular heart rhythm, which might not necessarily be the case. And sometimes they can say that your oxygen levels are low, and the equipment can be faulty. So I tell my patients a lot of times, don't let it make you anxious. Don't let it overtake your life. It's sometimes helpful because it can point you in the right direction of something. Kind of like I mentioned, it can make us look a little bit further into having a formal sleep study to check for things like sleep apnea, which can have a long-term impact on your health. Or if you're at high risk of something like AFib and you're having symptoms and your heart tracker is telling you that your heart variation is really high, then yes, we probably need to do more definitive cardiac testing to see if you're going in and out of AFib or if you have an arrhythmia. So I think they can be helpful to kind of clue you in on things, but you shouldn't let them overtake your life. I think especially people who have obsessive compulsive tendencies, or if you have a history of an eating disorder, if you have mental health disorder at all, it can be problematic because you can become obsessive. And
that's right,
especially with counting calories or counting the amount of calories that you're either taking in or that you're expending every day. And so you have to be really cautious with that. And I would say with the CGMs, sometimes the glucose levels aren't 100% accurate, but now the most recent CGMs that they've come out with are pretty accurate. I mean,
that's cool.
I think they even have been using them in ICUs and hospitals for some studies to track blood glucose and critically ill patients. So, I mean, I think it's within like 10 points of variation. So,
but the thing is, I wouldn't know the points of variation. So I don't know if it's worth to dive into that. But the point is that there are so that is the ugly, right? There are some areas where if you are more specific from a mental health standpoint, sometimes like ignorant is bliss. So when Emily tells me things from a health perspective, like I just don't even want to know that because, when she says, well, if you fall and break your hip or you fall and do something past a certain age, your mortality is increased 60% or whatever the outrageous number was in 12 to 18 months. So now when I'm like 75-year-old old ass man sitting there, I'm going to fall down, hurt myself. I'm like, damn, I'm dead. I'm gonna be dead in 12, 18 months. You know what I mean? But the reason why I bring that up is I don't know if that would be good for me because I'm not as bad as some people, but there are some people out there that just ignorant is bliss.
Yeah, and it really depends on who you are. I remember when I first started in med school, you become a hypochondriac because you know all the bad things that can happen.
It's so funny you say that because like I'll tell you what, this one time, never forget it, when we first started dating and I watched you and you were like this. You're like this. I might be having blah, 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 blah. I'm like looking at her like, what? I said, you're fine. You're okay. It was like some random disease that she probably read, like understood in medical school. I looked at her like, what the hell? You're fine. That's why we balance each other out.
There is this continuum. It's like when you're in med school, enough to be dangerous, enough to be a hypochondriac. And then you get to the point where you're in training and you still are at that point. But I think when you know what's common is common and you kind of get to the point where you know what to be concerned about, what not to be concerned about. And it's important to say that because if you're a patient who is more on the hypochondriac side and you're very anxious about your health, it's a double-edged sword.
I have some friends that
it can be dangerous to use all of these trackers because you can become very obsessive. If it's something that gives you reassurance, that's one thing to tell you that you're healthy and nothing is wrong, but it shouldn't be something that you feel like you're actively having to check every hour, every minute of every day. And so
that's fair.
So it depends on the person, but I do think, especially with obesity and weight management, it can be a motivator. It can be very helpful with behavior change, especially for people who are kind of starting from scratch and don't really know what to do.
What to do? Yeah. I think that is good advice because I think when we start doing our walking desk and we start doing it ourselves, this episode is going to be absolutely like prevalent for that. You know, and so if you guys are watching YouTube, I know I keep moving around. So I told him, this is so funny. We spent so much time adjusting our equipment today. And I realized the camera, if I'm not astute, I've never said astute in my life, but if I'm not sit like that, like I'm not on the camera. So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm like this. I'm like, I'm trying to get comfortable, and this is probably the right way. So this, honestly, we're at the end of this episode almost. So Emily, I digress. You know, I gotta put a story in there. If you had your magic ball, if you're looking into the future, what are some potential issues that you see with technology and health when it comes to these trackers?
Well, something that we've mentioned already, and that I've seen in a lot of these meta-analyses or summaries or research studies, it's the big concern is the widening of health disparities, increasing health disparities, where you're getting more and more information for people who have disposable income, who can afford this technology, while people who probably need it the most are not getting access to it. And some of that, unfortunately, is lagging insurance coverage, the cost of some of these technologies. It would be great if everyone had access to pedometers, and those are less expensive. I think you can get a pedometer for pretty cheap. It's the Fitbits and the Apple Watches that are more expensive, but I think those are probably more helpful than having a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, because they've shown that the calorie expenditure or some of the fluff that these devices provide aren't as effective as the pedometers, or the pedometers are more accurate.
Right.
So, but when you talk about things like CGMs, I think that's a real.
So we know you're a fan of CGMs. Mm-hmm. You're a fan of pedometers. So the other ones are kind of like, for you.
I like my Fitbit because it's nice sometimes to have that reminder, like you haven't stood up in the last.
Or like the mindful meditation. I don't know about y'all. That's so annoying. I feel like it's nagging me. I'm like looking like, ugh, click off. Because you have enough reminders in your life trying to grab your attention constantly.
Yeah, but I do think that it can be motivating, and especially if you are also tracking your calories. I think it's something that's beneficial initially. So we are at the point where we've tracked our calories a lot. I've been tracking my calories since I was an undergrad as a nutrition major. And so I know how many calories are in certain foods, and good calories and bad calories, and what a portion size looks like. But when you're starting from scratch and you don't know what a standard meal looks like, if you're trying to follow a 2,000 calorie a day or an 1,800 calorie a day diet.
Yeah, I'm going to pause on that for a second, because actually I have a really good friend of mine who's part of the body positivity movement. Big fan of theirs, because they're real people and they go through life. And I was watching one of their episodes or shorts, and one of the ladies on the show was talking about, I had to say this, but the body positivity movement and doctors just don't get along. I feel like there's a lot of negative connotation. But I'm looking at the camera. If y'all had a doctor on Emily, y'all would not feel that way. 100%. This is something she's passionate about. Emily has body dysmorphia. I'm just going to say it. We talked about it in the first episode. Your weight is fluctuated. My weight is fluctuated. I understand how hard it is. I have a highly addicted personality. And so the reason why I bring this up is because, she was talking about, like, I don't know. My doctor told me to eat less, so I ate less, and I think that doctors don't have the resources to support the volumes of patients that they're seeing. There's a major, where have all the good doctors gone? That was our first episode. That will be our first episode. And so go back to listen to that. Some really good information on there. And so I think it's not fair to say doctors when they're so run ragged. But I think that what you're saying is a great thing, because there is quality information out there. There are, eat less is not necessarily the answer. Eat the right foods.
Yeah. And I think
eat less of that.
Part of the problem too is that we have this big divide where you have conventional medicine and you have functional medicine.
Yep.
And I think that there should be a place where those two specialties merge. I think
that's where you are.
And I think that there are some practitioners, there are some providers out there that feel that way too. But I think that if you get to the root cause is the most important thing. Get to the reason why these things happen, why you got to the place that you got to. But you can't say, I'm just going to tell you, change your lifestyle and take these supplements and you'll be fine. Sometimes there is a place for conventional medicine, for modern medicine.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I
think you're right.
Yeah,
I
don't agree with piling on prescription medication just to plug the holes and to treat the symptoms.
We talked about medicine reconciliations in one of the previous episode. That was a whole episode, wasn't it? Or was it just a segment? It was a whole episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So okay. I could talk about this for hours.
Yeah,
but...
so could I. You want another hour? You think listeners want another hour? I'm just kidding.
Maybe next week.
maybe next week. All right, guys. So we talk about technology, the good, the bad, the ugly in healthcare. So hopefully you learned something. Honestly, I did. Like, you did a lot of research. I'm really impressed with the stats and all that, especially having a doctor and a practitioner point of view. So, okay. Well, that was an episode of Suits and Scrubs, a little health.
A little wealth.
And a lot of love. I didn't lean in that time. Until next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.
He's on the hustle, she's on the grind. There's no time to kill. For saving lives and new deadlines, and there's some holes to fill. With a little health and a little wealth and a lot of love. That's a life that we live. Suits and Scrubs.